We're going to have to start now.
Morning in progress.
Okay. Yeah, so I've muted everybody and we have to start. If I've muted you, please don't unmute yourself. So today we're looking at types of discourses. And before I begin, I would like to find out if you can hear me. So am I audible?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, please.
All right, so we have to get back to our slides and see what we have on board today. So we're looking at types of discourses. What is a discourse? Sometimes when we write, we put individual sentences together for different purposes. A collection of sentences is called a passage or discourse. Now, so basically when you put a number of sentences together, you call that a passage, or in critical thinking, we call it a discourse. And the primary issue is whether a discourse or parts, a passage or part of a passage is an argument or not. So we shall distinguish passages that are arguments and those that are not. Okay, so just give me a few seconds. Let me call for quietness just close to my room. Okay, so I'm back. Sorry. Now, so let me share my screen again. We're trying to distinguish which part of a passage is an argument and which one is not, as well as, specifying when a passage is an argument or when it is something else. So how do we do that? First of all, we have to study the different types of passages. We'll begin with argument. What is an argument? A discourse is called an argument if it contains a claim or conclusion that is supported with reasons or information. So an argument is basically a passage that contains a claim that is supported with reasons or information or evidence. So an argument contains at least two items or two components. Or you can say there are two basic components of an argument. First of all, you must have a conclusion, which could also be a claim or decision. And then, apart from having a conclusion, you must also have expressions aimed at providing support or proof for the conclusion. So these are the two basic components. You must have a conclusion and then you must have reasons, expressions providing support, providing reasons or support for the conclusion. Let's see an example of an argument. So this example has three statements. Statement one, Ghanaian men think women don't deserve to occupy high positions. That's statement one. Statement two, they question the competence and qualification of women who are sent to high office, but refrain from doing so to even incompetent men. And then statement three, therefore Ghanaian men do not respect women. Now, so that these are three statements. Notice that the above passage has three statements. Statements one and two are serving as information, evidence, or reasons to support statement three. So statements 1 and 2 are providing reasons to support statement 3. For attempting to support statement 3, these statements are called premises. So statements 1 and 2 are called premises. Now statement 3, which is being supported, is called conclusion. So you have 2 premises and 1 conclusion. The premises come before the conclusion, but sometimes the conclusion can come before the premises. So how do you identify arguments? Now, there are several ways of identifying an argument. Let me begin from this page, from this slide. Now, you can identify an argument by studying the structure of the sentence, asking yourself, what is the sentence trying to do? What is the sentence doing? What is the motive? What is the function of the sentence? You can see that statements 1 and 2 are providing information. And then statement 3 is like summarizing or interpreting statements 1 and 2. Or statement 3 is a claim. It's a claim about Ghanaians' men's attitude to women. And then that claim is supported by 2 statements that are providing detailed information to take that claim seriously. So statements 1 and 2 are providing, information that is helpful to someone who wants to appreciate the claim that Ghanaian men do not respect women. So statements 1 and 2 contain information that supports statement 3. So that's the first way of identifying an argument. You identify it by finding out the functions of the statements. Another way, an easier way of identifying arguments, is to look out for premise and conclusion indicators. There are certain words or phrases that tell you that you are looking at a conclusion or are looking at a premise. We call them indicators. We have the premise indicators and we have the conclusion indicators. Now let's look at these premise indicators. These words or phrases will immediately tell you you are looking at a premise. Statements that begin with "for, granted that," in view of the fact that, in as much as, since, it is a fact that, these words or phrases, point you to premises. They suggest that you're looking at premises. Now, when you see a statement starting with, it is a fact that, one cannot doubt that. When a sentence begins with, it is a fact that, obviously you know it is a factual statement. It is a sentence pointing, stating a fact. And, factual statements are normally premises because they provide factual information to support a conclusion. And then the same thing goes for the rest of the premise indicators. When you see a sentence beginning with the phrase, one cannot doubt that, or when you see a sentence beginning with because, or the reason is. Now, in the case of statements that begin with the phrase, the reason is that, it suggests that the conclusion or the claim came first, and then it will be followed by premises supporting it. So if someone has made a conclusion or made a claim, first of all made a claim, and then is trying to provide reasons for the claim, the person can start the premises with the reason is that, In other words, the person is saying the reason for this conclusion is that. So in that case, the person has already stated a conclusion or a claim before presenting reasons for it. Then you have sentences that can begin with the phrase as shown by the fact that. So that obviously points to a factual statement. And factual statements are normally, in most cases, they serve as premises because they are providing information about facts. So these are examples of premise indicators. They are not all the premise indicators, just a few of them. So you can identify many other premise indicators that are out there. Then we go to the conclusion indicators. We have several conclusion indicators. These ones here are not exhaustive of the list. There are just a few of them. There are many others. For example, you have therefore, consequently, hence, asserting that, for this reason. These are conclusion. These words or phrases will tell you immediately that you are looking at a conclusion. For example, the example we presented about on argument, you will see that the statement 3, which is a conclusion, started with the word therefore. So let me go back to that argument. Statement 3 says, therefore, Ghanaian men do not respect women. Now, you can replace the therefore with the other conclusion indicators. You can replace it with consequently. You can replace it with for this reason. You can replace it with hence. You can replace it with this being so, and so on. So now it is not a must that arguments will contain premise or conclusion indicators. You can as well write arguments without these indicators. They are not necessary to write a statement. They are just colorful additions to a statement. They don't serve any serious reason. Apart from making a statement look colorful, and in that way they give away the objective of the statement. Now, you wouldn't expect an examiner to give you an argument during exams that contains premise indicators and conclusion indicators. The examiner would expect you to be able to identify arguments without any indicators. For example, this example of argument, you can remove therefore, and then the statement will still stand. So any argument at all can be written without indicators, premise or conclusion indicators. You must learn how to identify arguments, whether they have indicators or not.
What time will you leave now?
I'm leaving.
Oh, then you have to go to CFO.
I'll come for it later.
Yeah, so
Come. I'll be happy to see. I'm happy. Oh, Charlie. Hey, Jesus. Video.
okay, but I'll finish soon, then I will get back. Okay, fine, I'll call you. Yeah, so I just got a call from someone, and then there was some noise, but I think the person has muted herself. So let's continue. So I was saying that arguments can be written without indicators, and you don't need to wait for indicators before you are able to spot arguments. As a matter of fact, you are not supposed to assume that arguments will have indicators at all. Okay. Now we go to non-arguments. Not every passage or cluster of propositions is an argument. Some passages are non-arguments, such as narratives, instructional passages, or rhetorical polemic or opinion. So let's see them one by one. A narrative is a passage that reports a sequence of events according to the order the events occurred. A passage that reports a sequence of events according to the order the events occurred. So, example, over the course of 2 weeks, some police officers have been observed stopping and checking cars in the area between Nsawam and Anyinam in the Accra-Kumasi road, on the Accra-Kumasi road. They extort money and abuse motorists who question their authority. Brandishing AK-47 assault rifles and dressed in heavy police gear, these officers do not just check cars, they also assault some motorists and passengers. Now, this passage is obviously a collection of factual statements, So narratives are usually collections of factual statements that depict the unfolding of an event or events in the order they unfolded, in the order that they occurred. So narratives are the easiest. A narrative is the easiest kind of passage to identify, because you simply identify it by seeing a cluster or collection of factual statements depicting, an orderly flow of events. Okay, then you have instructional passage. Instructional passage is a passage that describes a process or sequence of things to do in a specific order. A passage that describes a process or sequence of things to do in a specific order. It offers a list of directives to follow to accomplish some desired effects. The example below offers a list of directives on how to use a fire extinguisher. So now let's look at this instructional passage about using a fire extinguisher. Example: pull the pin, aim the nozzle at the base of the fire. Aiming at the top of the flame with the extinguisher won't be effective. In a controlled manner, squeeze the trigger to release the agent. Sweep the nozzle from side to side until the fire is put out. So this passage is a collection of imperatives. So when you have a collection of imperatives outlining what to do in a process or a procedure, then you have an instructional passage. And then you have rhetorical polemic. Yeah, Oliver Daku.
Sir, please, do you have another name for the instructional passage?
Which one?
The instructional passage, Yeah. Do you have another name?
Do you have another name?
I was thinking of operational.
Operational. Operational what?
Passage.
Operational passage. No.
Okay.
Operational passage, we are talking about a passage containing imperatives.
Okay.
An operation can be done without being instructed. So there is nothing about an operation that shows instruction. We're talking about a passage that shows, imperative, that someone wants another person to do something. All right, then we have rhetorical polemic. Rhetorical polemic is a passage communicating a usually strong feeling. Dembe Jalu, why is your microphone on? And Oliver, you have to mute yourself. Okay. So a rhetorical polemic is a passage communicating a usually strong feeling and persuasively venting an opinion. Now, for example, I hate these lab tests. Every time I'm exposed to the disease plants, I fall ill. I'm sure they hate me or they are punishing me or something. It's disgusting how I get sick so often. Now, this passage is a collection of emotive expressions. Statement 1, I hate these lab tests. That's obviously an emotive expression. Statement 2, every time I'm exposed to the disease plants, I fall ill. Now, that's not an emotive expression. That's a claim. That's a claim. And statement 3, I'm sure they hate me or they are punishing me or something. So that's an emotive expression. Statement 4, it's disgusting how I get sick so often. That's an emotive expression. So we have a collection of emotive expressions and then a claim. So an emotive, a rhetorical polemic is usually a collection of emotive expressions that might contain a claim. Now, when you are venting your feelings about something, you have to at least make a claim about what you are venting your feelings about. So usually emotive expressions, rhetorical polemic would need to contain at least a claim so that people can make sense of what you are venting your feelings about. You know. So in this example, you can see that they claim every time I'm exposed to the diseased plants, I fall ill. So that's why the person doesn't like lab tests. You know, the person is making a claim to show you why she's venting her feelings. Because without a claim, you don't even know what the person is talking about. So emotive, rhetorical polemic are usually a collection of emotive expressions that likely contain a claim, you know. And then an argument is, you know, a passage containing a claim, a conclusion or a claim that is supported with reasons. So whilst in an argument you see a claim supported with reasons, in a rhetorical polemic, if you see a claim, it is surrounded by emotive expressions. So that's the basic difference between argument and rhetorical polemic. Now let a little exercise or a brief exercise. Name 4 types of discourses studied in this chapter. What is an argument? List the components of an argument. Distinguish between argument and rhetorical polemic. So can different persons answer these 4 questions? Emmanuel Ajay.
Sir, please, I want to ask you, with the instructional statement, no, could it be imperative to? I mean, could you say it's an imperative statement or something?
I said it is a collection of imperatives. Yeah, so Eunice raised the hand, but her hand is down again. Now, so is anyone willing to answer these questions? Emmanuel Ajay, do you still have a question? Or because your hand is still raised?
No, sir, please. No.
Okay, so you need to bring down your hand. And then Adogad.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
An argument is the
go ahead. You said an argument is? You might be cut off by a network. The next person can help. Akwasi Jamfi.
You said an argument is a type of discourse if only contains a claim and conclusion. And in what you thought, we could see or give examples of phrases which give or which show phrases like on this note or other phrases which say that you are making an argument.
Yeah, but you need to.
So yeah, so we said. Check.
Okay, so maybe you need to reorganize your answer because you've not mentioned the other component of an argument. Now the next person, Isaac.
Yeah, we also said that I talk about expression. It contains.
Yeah, I said you need to go and reorganize yourself. Then you can come back. Who else needs to? So let me just quickly answer the questions so that we can move ahead. Name 4 types of discourses. So we have narrative, instructional passage, argument, and rhetorical polemic. what is an argument? An argument is a passage containing a claim, a conclusion or claim or decision supported by, and then expressions that aim to support the conclusion with reasons or information. List the components of an argument. So I just partially answered it when I was defining argument. So the components of an argument are, first of all, a claim, and then secondly, expressions that aim to support the claim. And then distinguish between an argument and rhetorical polemic. Isaac Kwabena was raising his hand. Okay, so, and then the fourth question, to answer the fourth question, distinguish between argument and rhetorical polemic. An argument is a claim that is supported with reasons, and then a rhetorical polemic is a claim that is surrounded by emotive or a collection of emotive expressions that might also contain claims, Okay, so now let's go to the second topic, verbal and real disagreements. Now, one of the things we know in logic is that majority of the disagreements in the world arise because of confusion over the meaning of a word or words. When some parties or when someone in a debate does not understand the accurate meaning of a word or words, and the person's position or disagreement is arising from that lack of understanding, then you say that it is a verbal disagreement. Or when two parties are in a debate and maybe one concept, or at least one of the concepts that is driving that debate has no clear meaning, Okay, so for an example of an argument that arises because one of the parties doesn't understand the true meaning of the full meaning of a word, you can look at example 1. Now, assuming two Americans or two Russians, two Americans in the US or two Russians in Russia are talking about Africa, and then one of them says that man on TV is a Fanti. The second person says no, he's an Akan. So imagine that two Russians are disagreeing about whether a Fanti is an Akan. The disagreement is because one of them doesn't understand that a Fanti is also an So when a disagreement arises because of inadequate information about the meaning of a concept, then you say it is a verbal disagreement. The second example, she's a Christian because she receives Holy Communion. And then, no, she's not a Christian because she does not speak in tongues. So this debate arises because there is no agreement between the parties on what being a Christian means. That's the meaning of Christianity. It's not an agreed meaning between the two parties. So it is a verbal disagreement because it's a disagreement that arises because the meaning of a concept has not been settled between two or more parties, So when you see such a conflict, it's a verbal disagreement. Now let's contrast it to what we regard as real disagreements. Now for real disagreements, we say a real dispute is a substantive disagreement about facts or values. So real disagreements are also called substantive disagreements. Real disagreements or dispute, or substantive disagreements or substantive disputes. They are usually about facts or values. Example 1 is about facts. Now let's assume that two Americans or two Russians or two Chinese in China are discussing Africa, one of them points to Ghana and says, Accra is the capital of this country. The other person says, no, it is Kumasi. You know. So the two of them needs to settle their disagreement by going to verify which one is the, you know, so it's a disagreement about facts and it is settled by verification. Then the second one is a value disagreement. Now, imagine that imagine that we are drawing the plan for a new country, and we are trying to decide which town should be the capital. Someone says the town at the center of the country should be the capital. Then another person says no, the town beside the sea, the town at the coastal area, you know, the town that has access to the ocean should be the capital. You know, so that's a value disagreement. The disagreement between people's preferences, you know, between people's preferences. And so if you can also imagine when Kwame Nkrumah and the big six were negotiating independence, and then during the negotiations there were arguments about where to site the capital of the country on that proposal. And then maybe somebody says Accra should be the capital of Ghana, and another person says no, Accra should not be the capital of Ghana. So you see that this is a disagreement about preferences. It's not a disagreement about meaning, about the meaning of anything. Everyone knows where Accra is, you know, and everyone knows where Ghana is. And so it's a disagreement about preferences. So it's a value disagreement. So the real disagreements are either disagreements over facts or disagreements over values. Okay, so now let's do a little exercise. Determine which of the following disagreement is verbal or real. Sandra says that man is quite old. He died at 50. Comfort says you call that old. He died young. You know, so is this disagreement a verbal disagreement or a real disagreement? If you want to answer, if you want to contribute, you can raise your hand. Okay, so Afriye, you can.
There is a real disagreement.
Your reasons. Yes, you need to give your reasons. And while you are at it, the second person, Akwasi Jamfi.
Sir, please, I think it's a value dispute because in this one we see people's preferences. Comfort, Sandra is saying the man is quite old. He died at 50. A Comfort's preference is she means or she thinks the man should be called old. So I think it's a value dispute.
What really is a preference? Because
people's choice or
yeah, a choice. So what is the choice here? You know, I mean, are you saying that one person prefers what exactly?
Comfort prefers that a man not be called old. He prefers that or she thinks the man is young.
Yeah, but that is not what we traditionally see as preferences. By preferences, we mean what people want to be done, or you know how people want the world to be. In this case, saying that somebody died young is not really a preference. It's really a perception. about what age, can be called old age. So while we are at it, the other people, anyone who also has a conflicting answer can also. There are no.
Hello, sir. Please, can I try?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, sir. Please. So I think it's a verbal dispute because here, what the other guy is saying, I don't really agree with that because he said, Sandra, that man is quite old. He died at 50. And Comfort also replied, you call that old, he died young. This one, there's no personal preference. Preference is exclusive to the individual only. What the individual wants. So I think it's a verbal dispute because the disagreements, they are disagreeing about something which is not a fact, that he died 50. If someone died 50, it's not actually a fact for you to say maybe it's a preference that this person died young or this person died very old. So I think it's a verbal dispute. Thank you.
All right, so let me see. Sorry, I'm just trying to navigate the screen. So now I think I should just go ahead and make a few comments and then we proceed. When we talk about age, the question of what age qualifies as old age, it depends on generally at what age the average person dies, So the age that the average person dies or the average lifespan is different from one country to the other, There are some countries where people live as long as 120 years, 150 years. And so the average lifespan there could be maybe 100 years. So if you have a place where most people live beyond 100 years, then it will be difficult to convince them that 70 years in that country is old age, because 70 years, you have not yet even gotten to half of the total lifespan, You can only convince them that something like 90 or close to 100 is old age. But in a country where the average person dies at the age of 50, there you can convince people that 40 years is old age, because 40 years is just 10% before the average, There are some countries where the mortality rate, the average lifespan has gotten down to, life expectancy has gotten down to, the average life expectancy has gotten down to even 45 years. One African country, I don't know which country was that. Is it Niger Republic or I've forgotten. So not necessarily because they are poor, but because they live very bad lifestyles, So maybe there's too much, they drink alcohol, they live lifestyles that don't allow you to last long and those things. And then, of course, you have to consider environmental pollution and things. So if in some countries, people generally die at the age of 50, some other countries, people can live, the average person lives up to 70 years. Elsewhere, the average person lives up to 80. In some places, the average person lives up to 120. Then it becomes very difficult to determine when someone can be called old. So now it means that the meaning of old is, it's not settled. It's not settled. So because old does not have a clear meaning, you have to say it is a verbal dispute. Because until the meaning of old is settled, you continue to have that kind of dispute. All right, so I think this is the end of our class. Next class will be...
Hello, sir, please, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sir, please, you were saying something that old is not actually, it does not actually have a clear meaning here. and you were saying that different countries have different perspectives about old age and all those. So I wanted to ask, what about the religious aspect of old age? You know, in the Bible, they used to say living past 70 is like, if you live like 75, 70 upwards, it's like a blessing. The actual age is 70 years, and then all the others.
Not everybody is a
are
Christian.
blessing. So I wanted to ask about that one. So is that one also considered in this aspect?
Not everybody is a Christian.
Yeah, so it means
Have you considered that?
it means that for those who
We are talking science now.
it means that for those who wrote the Bible, life expectancy was at 70, you know. And you can see that they are not the only people on the planet. Other people have life expectancies of 120, 150. Some places have general life expectancy of 40 and 50. You know, so it varies from place to place. And the Bible was just written by people from one part of the world. All right, so in the absence of any more questions, I'm going to end the class. I'll be modifying the link I sent to you for our classes so that link would contain 2 classes a week instead of 1 class. Those who hold their classes on Fridays will begin to hold it on Fridays and Wednesdays by the same time of the day. The same thing, and then those who hold their classes on Saturdays will begin to hold it Saturdays and Thursdays by the same time of the day. So you'll be holding your classes by Wednesdays and Fridays by this time. Okay, so I'm going to have to end the class, and I wish you all of you a very happy weekend.
Sir, please, I have a question, sir.
Yeah,
Go to the lecturer's office.
Okay, thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
Have
a good night. Bye.
Abdul.
Jude. Well, yeah, also,
The alcohol takers.
Jude Michelle, can I have your number?
Bye, guys.
Yeah, you can get
Jude Michelle, can I have your number?
All right, so Abdul.
Hey, guys,
Bye.
Yeah.
Jude Michelle, can I have your number?
Yes, sir.
No.
Man.